This is the second installment of a very limited series I have called Second Takes. And what Second Takes is I only do these videos when I see a film a second time in the theaters, which very rarely happens. That's why there's only been two of these videos now. And what spawned this one was a sequel that nobody asked for, The Devil Wears Prada 2. It definitely a film that I didn't think I would like as much as I did. But what's crazy about it, specifically for a sequel that nobody asked for, it deals with a lot of heavy subjects and stuff. You know, of course, all the principles are back from the original. You got Anne Hathaway, Meryl Streep, Stanley Tucci, and Emily Blunt. And of course, they're even better than they were in the first one, with maybe the exception for Meryl Streep. I don't really think her performance is better than it was in the first one. But what's interesting about her dynamic in the sequel is now she has to deal with uh, being politically correct, having to do her own stuff. Like she can't just throw her coat on the desk of her assistants and people be complaining to HR, mainly because people are, you know, for lack of a better word, bitch ass motherfuckers. You know, they don't understand that, you know, sometimes you got to do the shit jobs when you're the underlings and stuff. You know, for some reason, people can't grasp that concept, you know, and she can't say certain things. She can't be as mean. And so she's having to navigate these waters as well as also being in an irrelevant medium like print media and stuff. And of course, Anne Hathaway's character has to deal with that too. You know, she's in the beginning of the film, we see her get fired from her magazine or from her periodical that she works for, you know, her whole crew, you know, because there's a CEO that's, you know, downsizing or some shit. And so now she happened to be back where she should have been all this time. You know, what's crazy is it's almost like the prodigal daughter returns, essentially, you know, because, you know, the runway ends up in a big scandal and stuff. So she's kind of she's kind of sent there to clean up everything, you know. And of course, like a lot of great moments in this film, a lot of fucking cameos in it, you know. It's definitely a great um, sequel in terms of, you know, it do a lot of callbacks to the first one naturally, but also, you know, it also deals with like all the stuff that's relevant for the times and stuff, you know, at a time, you know, really kind of depressing and stuff. One thing that upsets me is that they can never pair Anne Hathaway with a good dude. You know, she always gets these kind of ain't shit dudes and stuff. You know, granted, the dude in the sequel is not as big of a bitch as the one in the first one. So, I mean, that's kind of a plus, you know. But you also have to get to see Meryl Streep's character be a lot more human and stuff. You know, there's a lot of twists and turns, ups and downs in the film. It's definitely a very good companion to the first one. And, you know, who knows, there may be a third one, you know, and fucking in a world where there's a lot of unnecessary sequels and stuff, it might as well make it a trilogy. I mean, I wouldn't be mad at that. The music's great in it too. You know, it's just a really beautiful film. A lot of beautiful moments in the film, especially the one that made me tear up a little bit, is when Meryl Streep finally acknowledges how important Stanley Tucci is to the organization. You know, because what a lot of people don't understand is usually the motherfucker that runs shit is not always the boss. You know, and the Stanley Tucci's character, you know, he's the one that's basically running shit, but he don't have to be called the boss, you know. But the real boss, you know. And what's crazy too is that how, you know, Anne Hathaway's character, she finds out, you know, this is where she's supposed to be. Meryl Streep's character knew that shit all along, but Anne Hathaway's character didn't want to admit it. You know, she had to go out on her own, find all of her shit in what are the 20 years in between these two movies and stuff. And what's even crazier is there's 20 years after this shit, and these motherfuckers that look like they aged a day. Honestly, Stanley Tucci looks a lot older than all of them, you know. But that's the beauty of makeup and the power of movie magic. They can make anybody look a certain way and stuff. But definitely, like I said, very big surprise for me on this one. You know, I definitely was not expecting this movie to be this good. You know, it also has a lot to say about, you know, powerful women and working women and stuff, as did the first one. It expounds on it some more, and like I said, you get to see Meryl Streep's character be a lot more human, and, you know, Anne Hathaway's character find herself even more than she did in the first one, you know. And like I said, very beautiful film. So if you haven't seen it, see it in theaters. It's a real treat, especially for a sequel that nobody asked for. I mean, Anne Hathaway too. She is an absolute national treasure.